Okay, everyone, welcome and happy Friday. My name is Kim Guetta, and I'm a compensation management administrator and project manager here at the JER Group. I have about 15 years of HR experience. I'm an Excel enthusiast, and I love taking LinkedIn courses. Check out my LinkedIn profile. You'll see it's there's something wrong with me. But anyway, I have had the pleasure of working on projects with Cliff Sandsmark for 2 years now, and he's certainly a wealth of knowledge and always willing to share his knowledge. And it makes me happy that you are here today so that he can share with you today's webinar topic, a strategic approach to compensation planning. Cliff is a certified senior compensation consultant with over 20 years of experience working on a variety of compensation systems for Fortune 500 companies. He has an MBA from the University of Arkansas Walton School of Business. He holds a certified compensation professional and certified sales compensation professional certifications from World at Work, the Senior Professional Human Resources Certification from HRCI, and the Senior Certified Professional Certification from the Society of Human Resource Management. That's a mouthful, Cliff. Sounds like a lot of work to get there. He's a seasoned HR professional with extensive compensation, benefits, employment law compliance. This includes designing corporate and nationwide compensation plans, including base pay plans, sales compensation design, incentive pay, job analysis, job evaluation, and other related compensation projects. He also has solid expertise with FLSA, Davis-Bacon, and OFCCP compliance. Over the past 18 years, he served at the University of Arkansas as a faculty member teaching human resources and compensation at the graduate level, as well as prep classes for the SHRM certification exam. He has previously served on the committee for World at Work that develops test items for the CSCP certification exam for sales professionals. So that's quite a lot, and I feel very blessed to be working with Cliff. So Cliff, I will let you take it away if you want to talk about today's agenda. Oh, let me just mention that we will be sending out all these slides and a recording of the webinar by the end of day Tuesday next week. Just to let you guys know that. Okay, Cliff, your turn.
Well, thank you. And usually when you hear the word seasoned professional, seasoned is a nice way to say you're about burnt out by now. So you sort of keep that in the back of your mind. But I'd like to see just how many certified professionals are in the audience. You know, you have an SCP or a CP or an SPHR, PHR, or any of those designations that are after your name. You just go ahead and put something in the chat. Put something in the chat box. Sure, message. Very good. Very good. Anyone else? Sheriff, PHR. I can tell the ones that have the PHR and the CP, they've had those for a while. When HRCI finally left the building. Good. So we didn't get this pre-approved by SHRM or SPHR. We're going to work on that in the future. So you can get at least an hour credit before you're towards your recertification. So, but you can still claim it. It's just not pre-approved. Just make sure you put the details in. Maybe put a copy of the title slide in your file, in case you're audited before every chance. So, this would be good. So I always encourage certification. Actually, I teach a certification prep class at the University of Arkansas, and actually this year is my 20th year teaching that class. So our pass rate is above national average, so we're really proud of our little program. And actually it is available online, so no matter where you live, if you want to contact me, I could put you in this, I could hook you up with something to help you pass your CP or SCP with CP or SCP, and that makes a difference, especially from employers who are looking to hire talent. It sort of signals the fact that you've, spent the time to do something a little extra to go ahead and get ahead of your profession. So anyway, So here's our agenda. I was famous for, uh, they said I couldn't talk unless I had at least 100 slides or more on some of my stuff. But I've calmed down a little bit. So there's only about 20 here. But what I plan to do today is talk about, this is a holistic approach to compensation planning. And I want to just look at, some of the things to think about when you're going into that process. And it's not just, it doesn't have to be just an administrative tool to um, work with your pay systems, but it can be something that can help you with your strategic goals and the company's objectives to be a success in the marketplace. So, we're going to start out with, what is compensation planning? Then we'll talk a little bit about business strategy and kind of what is strategy. Then we're going to try to combine the two, where you have business strategy plus compensation equals strategic compensation. So some of the key components of compensation planning. We'll just touch a little bit about compensation philosophy. I'm going to talk a little bit more about job analysis and evaluation because those are the two key drivers of building a compensation structure, which is number 7. Excuse me. Then we'll talk about benefits and perks and how they fit into the total rewards picture. Then we'll look at what is a competitive market strategy and how do you do salary benchmarking, market research. I'll give you some tips on that and things to look for. Then we'll talk about employee engagement and getting feedback from your employees. We'll do a question and A, and then we'll sign off for the day. So, next slide, please. All right. So, what is compensation planning? Compensation planning is a strategic process of determining how an organization structures and administers its employee compensation to ensure fairness, competitiveness, and alignment with organizational goals. It involves creating a comprehensive framework for employee remuneration. I always had trouble with that word, including salaries, bonuses, benefits, and other rewards to attract, motivate, and retain top talent. So, um, next slide, please. So, what is a business strategy? Strategy in business refers to a comprehensive plan of action that guides an organization toward achieving its long-term goals and maintaining a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Strategic plans, especially usually those are done at the executive level in the C-suite. Strategic plans usually go out 5 years. From there, three, sometimes 3, but mostly 5 years out. From there, you develop operational plans, and those usually have goals about a year out. So it involves making deliberate decisions about resource allocation, market positioning, and operational priorities to create value for stakeholders, including customers, their employees, their suppliers, and other shareholders. A business strategy is often described as a battle plan for a better future, outlining the key initiatives and tactics that support the company's vision and objectives. It serves as a roadmap that aligns various organizational functions and departments, ensuring that all efforts contribute to the overall strategic direction and ultimately the success of the organization. Next slide, please. So, business strategy. What are the key aspects? Hold on 1 second here. Yeah. Value creation, developing ways to deliver superior value to customers, employees, and their partners. So unless you can demonstrate value to your customer, your potential customer or client, then you're not going to win the business, then you'll lose it to somebody else who can. Competitive positioning, differentiating the organization from their competitors through like either unique offerings, operational efficiencies, etc. Resource allocation, how best to utilize your financial, your human, and physical resources to support the strategic goals and make the operational goals come to life. Then the adaptability, adjusting tactics in response to changing market conditions and competitive dynamics. There's a lot of companies out there that I kind of like the last one, adaptability, that they get so bureaucratic that they can't respond to the market in time and it just overtakes them. And what used to be a proud brand and is now no longer. Like I like to take the example of Eastman Kodak. Used to be called by photographic professionals as the Great Yellow Father, and they had a strong what's known as brand equity. When you look at just the logo of Kodak, you already have those associations with quality and photography and all that stuff. But when the digital revolution came around in the 90s and memory became cheaper for computers, they were slow to react and they lost their chance at a market share. So that once lofty brand of Kodak is really no longer associated with anything. It's sad to see such a titan that was such a success in the United States and throughout the world, no longer there and taken over by other players. So next slide, please. So how do you create a successful business strategy? You start by defining your company's long-term aspirations, re-identify your core values, and target marketing position. Your vision should articulate what success looks like and serve as a guiding star for all those strategic decisions. It should also include specific specific end goals such as market share or customer experience benchmarks, financial metrics, etc., to motivate and align your team's mission. Conduct a thorough analysis. Perform internal and external assessment. You probably heard the name SWOT analysis, SWOT, where you look at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses are internal to the organization's opportunities and threats are what is external to the organization. So SWOT analysis is fairly common in most organizations. And then leads into a market analysis where you study industry trends, customer needs, competitors, and emerging opportunities or risk. You need to also define your objectives. Use SMART goals. SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. You probably heard that in other ways, but the best way I can illustrate that is SMART goals. You know, you want to lose weight. I want to lose 10 pounds. Say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. Well, to make that a SMART goal, or as I say, I want to lose some weight. So you want it to be specific, measurable, attainable, and relevant. You say, I want to lose what? Specific, 10 pounds. 10. I want to lose weight, very specific. Measurable, I want to lose 10 pounds. Is that attainable? Yes. Is it relevant and time bound? Yes, because I want to do it in 30 days. So um, these goals that will align around your vision and could include revenue targets, market expansion, or product development milestones. Clear objectives provide focus and measurable benchmarks for success. Identify your competitive advantage. What makes your business unique? Your USP, your unique selling proposition, and how will you compete effectively, whether through differentiation, cost leadership, or niche focus. Defining your competitive edge is crucial for strategic position. You know, a lot of people think if they have to sell something, they need to be cheaper than the other guy. They need to be a Walmart. Otherwise, if they're higher than somebody else, they won't sell anything. Well, price signals quality too. Yes. So setting a price on a service or a business or a product communicates whether where it is on a particular band. For example, when Apple released used to be Apple used to release its new version. If you notice, it was really expensive. Then after about 6 to 8 months, it would drop the price, and it would drop the price another after 6 to 8 months, because they know there are first adopters out there that'll pay anything to get the new iPhone. And then once they all bought it, then they go to the next tier and exhaust that tier, and then go to the next lower tier. It's not that they get more efficient or that it gets cheaper. There are people with certain price sensitivities that will buy it at any price, and then they just work their way down. So that's the cost strategy that's used by a lot of companies. So from there, you develop strategic initiatives. You translate your analysis and goals into actionable initiatives. This includes designing specific projects, marketing plans, operational improvements, or technological investments needed to achieve your objective. Then you build your framework for execution, align departmental goals with your overall strategy, ensure each team understands their role and responsibilities in executing that strategy, develop a detailed action plan, timelines, resource allocations, and KPIs to monitor your progression. Foster flexibility and inclusion. Create a strategy that is adaptable to market changes and external forces. Involve diverse stakeholders in the planning process. They gain different perspectives, enhance buy-in, and build resilience against unforeseen challenges. Implement and communicate. Share your strategy clearly with your organization. Use consistent messaging to ensure everyone understands how their work contributes to strategic goals. Provide training and resources to empower the team. Monitor, measure, and adjust. Regularly track progress using KPIs and data analytics. Be prepared to pivot or refine your strategy based on your performance metrics and external market shifts. Continuous review ensures that your strategy remains relevant and effective. Engage in experts. Review it regularly. Consult with strategic advisors or industry experts periodically to gain insights and to validate your approach. Schedule regular strategy reviews, quarterly or annually, to adapt to changing conditions and sustain competitive advantage and make course corrections as needed. So in summary, creating a successful business strategy involves setting a compelling vision, conducting a thorough analysis, defining clear objectives, leveraging your unique strengths, translating plans into actionable initiatives, fostering flexibility, maintaining ongoing evaluation. This disciplined approach ensures alignment, responsiveness, and sustained growth. Next slide, please. So some of the common mistakes when developing a business strategy: just repeating last year's plan without reevaluation. Many companies simply recycle previous strategies without considering changes in the market, customer needs, or competitive landscape. This can cause stagnation and missed opportunities for innovation or adaptation. Lack of clarity or lack of concreteness. Strategic plans often fail because they are too vague or abstract, lacking specific, actionable steps and clear direction. A strategy must be concrete and spell out exactly what the organization aims to achieve and how. Overcomplicating the plan. Complicated, lengthy strategies can be difficult for employees to understand and implement. The most effective strategies are simple, concise, and easily communicated throughout the organization. Neglecting customer needs. Yeah. Fail to define and understand the target customer and their needs and leads to strategies that miss the mark in the marketplace. Customer insight should be at the core of the strategic planning. Ignoring competitives and market trends. Overlooking competitive environment and broader market trends can result in strategies that are out of touch or easily outmaneuvered by your rivals. Insufficient stakeholder buy-in. Developing strategy in isolation without input from key departments or stakeholders. often leads to poor adoption and weak implementation. Early engagement ensures alignment and smoother execution. No clear implementation plan. A strategy is effective if it isn't translated into a practical action plan and defined responsibilities, timelines, and milestones. Many strategies fail because they remain theoretical and are not operational, not defining or tracking key metrics. Without clear key performance metrics or KPIs, the regular progress monitoring, it's impossible to know if the strategy is working or needs adjustment. Basing decisions on assumptions instead of data, strategic decisions made without robust data or market research can lead to misguided priorities and actions. Data-driven insights are essential for effective strategies. Failing to review and adapt, markets and environments change rapidly. Strategies that are not regularly reviewed and adjusted become obsolete, leading to missed opportunities or mounting losses. Too many priorities or trying to please everybody because you spread too thin. Attempting to focus on too many objectives dilutes resources and impact. A good strategy requires making tough choices in what to prioritize and what to ignore. Then there's lack of coherence. Strategy composed of disconnected initiatives or conflicting goals leads to confusion and inefficiency. All elements of the strategy should fit together into a coherent whole. So by avoiding some of these common mistakes, organizations can develop business strategies that are clear, actionable, and positioned for sustained success. So next slide, please. So what is strategic compensation? Compensation. Strategic compensation is a human resource management approach that involves designing and managing an employee reward system to align with an organization's overall business objectives and strategic goals. Unlike traditional compensation practices that focus solely on only base salary, strategic compensation takes a holistic and data-driven approach, incorporating various elements such as market trends, performance incentives, long-term rewards, and non-monetary benefits to attract, motivate, and retain top talent. This approach aims to create a competitive advantage by ensuring pay equity, transparency, and fairness, which enhances employee engagement and satisfaction. It also helps organizations manage total rewards and total employee compensation effectively, supporting growth, equity, and cost efficiency while maintaining competitiveness in the labor market. Key components of strategic compensation includes conducting market analysis and benchmarking, establishing a clear pay philosophy and strategy, performing job analysis and evaluation, and developing comprehensive reward packages that combine direct and indirect compensation elements. So overall, strategic compensation is a proactive, goal-oriented process that aligns employee rewards with organizational success, fostering higher performance, improved retention, and a stronger employer band. Next slide, please. There's some of the key components of compensation planning. You're going to look at develop a compensation strategy and embed that into a compensation philosophy. Going to look at job analysis and job evaluation of your positions. You're going to do some salary benchmarking and going to do some market research. Going to look at work on your compensation structure to be sure it's efficient. And also you're going to look at some additional non-cash compensation in terms of benefits and perks. So next slide, please. So compensation philosophy defines a company's stance on compensation, and it helps align its strategic roles and culture. It's designed to give managers a guide on making decisions about pay, whether, what do you pay a new person coming into the organization? Do you do a severance if you're if you're letting somebody go, et cetera. So it takes into some of the things like it'll define, for example, merit pay and how often that is given throughout the organization and where that's part of your total rewards package. Something called red circle and green circle rates. Red circle rates are those pay rates that are above the max of your salary band. Green is those that are below the part of your salary plan, and those are defined in your compensation administration, just really what to do if someone is over your pay salary bands or under your pay salary bands. And so it gets a clear notion of what they need to do to correct that. It also gives you guidelines of what pay compression is. And pay compression is simply if you're bringing in new people at the same or higher level of pay than someone who's been doing the same job for the past 10 years, you've got a compression problem and you need to work on your salary plans to get them up to speed and up to date with current market conditions. So next slide, please. So here, I talked a little bit about job analysis and evaluation. This is a good, basically doing an inventory of what your positions are designed to do, what they're designed not to do. It it's it's a very thorough exercise. It takes some time to do it right, but it looks at things like the tasks that the positions require to work, training. What kind of training does this position need over time and to keep up with trends in the workplace or technology? How much education is required to do the job successfully? And what are the responsibilities that the job entails? Once you finish a good job analysis, you're going to embody that in something called a job description. Now, I know everybody in the audience just loves doing job descriptions, but they are a necessary evil. And please take the time to do it and do it right because it covers so many areas in your organization. So another thing it outlines is something called job specifications, the amount of and this is usually in the beginning, how much education is required to be successful at the job on day one, how much prior experience you need to do the job successfully on day one, the skills required, plus also if you have a competency model, what the competencies involved and what level of competency you need to be at, like I said, to be successful at the job or to be successful at the next job hire. The next thing you notice is job evaluation. Now, job evaluation and job analysis is not the same thing. Job evaluation is basically you're taking your jobs and you're building a job hierarchy, or I like to illustrate it as a card ranking. So, from ace to king or two to ace, however you order your cards, is taking those jobs and developing a stacking so you know where their pay should fall in relation to other people in the organization, plus also competitively outside the organization. So there are some qualitative methods, and they're called job ranking and job slotting. Basically, take your jobs and you take your job descriptions, and then you basically lay them out and use maybe some input for some managers and stuff. Just which job is a little bit higher than the next one versus the next one. And this process can be there's a lot of I know there's a lot of opinions as to how some jobs slot against each other, but that's something you just need to work out. It works for a small number of jobs. If you're in a small organization, you're a single shingle kind of person, and you have to do everything. If you have 10 to 15 jobs, you have 10 to 15 job descriptions. You can easily rank sort those fairly quickly and get a good job evaluation because this will be the backbone of your salary plan. There are some quantitative methods too. One of them is well known as point factor systems, like with the Hay Group, for example, where you look at certain factors that make up a job, you know, experience required, education required, it doesn't manage people, etc. And then you evaluate each job with a checklist, and each factor gets a particular score, which you add up. And once you add them up, then it's fairly easy to go ahead and numerically stack those jobs, you know, based on a score. So, all right, next slide, please. So from there, once you have your stacking done or you've done your job evaluation and you've got a hierarchy, then you can establish pay grades, salary ranges, and also work on your performance-based pay programs. Again, the pay grades and salary ranges, they're an administrative tool. They're there to help you manage your your salary structures and how what do people get paid or what they don't get paid. You need to have it market driven. In other words, it's reflective of the market. So you can say that excuse me a second. So you can say that you keep your pay to market, so you're not causing any other problems down the road. It also gives management some guidance as to, for example, where to bring in new people, you know, what happens at the midpoint of the pay range, etc. So next slide, please. And I know we talked about a lot about cash compensation or base pay, but there's also other things that you can add that adds value to the employee. You know, health insurance, for example, retirement plans, paid time off. So this is all added to enhance the overall compensation package. The key here is to know your employees and also know your demographics of your workplace. So if you have a younger workplace, they're not going to be so excited about retirement, but they're going to want something like pet insurance. So you need to develop a program for that, or people that are on the middle age with kids, they're going to be more interested in the health care because the younger kids, you know, they're called the invincibles. They don't get sick or anything, but you know, when you start having kids and you taking them to the doctor, that suddenly becomes more important. So know your employees and know your demographics to be able to select which benefit plans are good for you. So next slide, please. How to stay market competitive. These are some strategies you could use. The total reward strategy is most people, when they have a job, they tend to focus on their base pay and maybe some bonuses or incentives on top of that. But they don't realize just how much the organization contributes on their behalf. So what companies have started doing, and with the help of their HRIS systems, they do what's called a total reward statement, where you say, okay, this is your base pay, this is the overtime that you made, and this is the bonuses that you got. But let's look at some of the other ways that the organization gives you, you know, pays you that are basically non-cash or you don't see. For example, you know, your health care, I'm sure, do you donate a portion of their premium or do you pay the full premium for your on their behalf? They need to know what the cost of that is and list it on the statement. Also, you know, if you provide short-term disability at you know which you pay for, what about 401k contributions? What do you support that? So you add all those up, and it's really eye-opening to see just how much money the organization provides on behalf of its employees, and that really makes a good impact on them. Saying, well, I got base pay, but I got my 401k match, I got my employer contribution to my health plan, I get free short-term disability, and some other things. So all those add up, and they'll put it on a total reward strategy to help illustrate that. Now, there's something out there called a lead, lag, or match strategy. Excuse me, lead, lag, or match strategy. when designing your compensation systems, um, you need to make a decision where you're going to be in the marketplace. So let's say you've done your homework, you did all your research, you've got good market data. So you're going to look at kind of where you want to be in the market. So you have a match strategy. So, well, for right now, I just want to match the market. I just want to be at the median or the average. Most people take the median because that throws away all the outliers and junk and stuff at the tails of the distribution. So I want to match, but the thing is, when you adjust everything to match the marketplace, it's going to move over the 1 year two. It's going to move about 2.5 to 2.8% per year on the average. So what some companies do, they take a lag approach where they'll go below the market. They'll go below the market and then let the market catch up to it. So these are some of the strategy you can use in terms of how you define your pay. So you may want to say, okay, I want to lead the market. I want to be at the 75th percentile and outpay those other 75% of companies that are hiring for this job. Or you could take a lag strategy and say, I want to be behind the market. And what I want to do is say, okay, even though I'm hiring my base pay below the market, I'm going to make it up with a lump sum every year based on the performance metrics. And everyone meets the performance metrics and add that to the base pay, they'll actually make more that way than someone just paying a base pay and maybe a profit sharing bonus. So, but it's very metric driven. And plus, the nice thing about doing a lag approach, if business goes down, the bonuses go away, so you don't have that overhead cost built in that you need to deal with when there's no revenue to pay for it. So then there's pay transparency. Just how much do you want your employees to know about their pay, the salary bands? Some companies are totally, hands off. If some share some things, if you're in a public institution, you're required to probably publish your pay scale so everything is open and transparent. So there's been a lot of arguments both ways on that. So you just have to do what's right for your culture and your organization. Next slide, please. So here, I just illustrated a pay scale kind of structure, very simple pay scale. And there's a couple of things here I just wanted to point out. Now, this is pay scales and salary bands are administrative tools. That's all they are to help you make decisions on pay and also help control your costs. So I want to point out to start that when you do your salary planning and you're developing your pay ranges, you should always start with the midpoint. The midpoint represents two things, and it represents what the market average is for that position, and plus or minus 10%. You're not going to hit it directly. In other words, it's not going to be 65,000. It's going to be a range of values because remember, you're doing statistics, you're doing sampling, and you're not going to get the whole population. But it's around 65,000, give or take or 10%. But that's going to be your market reference point. So it gives you the market reference point, plus it also represents someone fully qualified for the position. So for this job, which pays 65,000, that's running about the market average. But somebody who's fully qualified to go in the position and do the job, it's going to cost you $65,000. Now, the mistake that people make, and I just wanted to point this out, is that they think this is a linear relationship. In other words, it's a straight line from 0 to 100% with uh, equal merit raises every year. But remember what I said about the midpoint. It's someone who's fully qualified. If that position and that job is worth $65,000 on the marketplace, and I can hire all day long between 60 and 65,000, Why, ask yourself, why would I pay 70,000 when the market's selling, when I can get it out of the market for 65? So you got to look at when you get to the 70,000 and the $75,000 point, you're basically overpaying for a job that in the market and the average only pays 65,000. So there's something, yeah, again, keep that in mind because you see, I build merit matrix structures that if you're, and this is broken into quadrants. You can see it's quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4, where the middle dot at the 50% mile is the midpoint of the market average of the 50th percentile. Um, you want to be able to say, well, is it, if I pay more than 65,000, am I getting any more value? Or what am I getting for that extra money that I'm paying that buddy? So rather than a straight line, what about high demand positions driven by market deficiencies? That's an exception, Deborah. I'm glad you brought that up. The question here, what about, oh, my pop-up went away. Could you read that for me, Cam?
Sure. It says, what about high demand positions driven by market deficiencies?
You handle those separately. There's going to be those positions that are also known as hot jobs, or they're moving so fast they don't even fit a traditional scale. You got to treat, there's two things you got to watch for. You got to treat those separately and make sure you meet market demand. But also, you got to worry about compression. It becomes an issue where you have incumbents who've been doing the job there, let's say a number of 10 years, and all of a sudden it just became a hot commodity. And you're hiring people at or above the people that have been doing the job for 5, 10 years. When you start hearing things like, well, if I want to raise in this company, I just got to quit and get rehired, then I'll get more money. You start hearing employees taken like that, you got a compression problem somewhere. And what happens is that's basically your salary plans aren't keeping pace fast enough with the market. So you kind of have to pull those aside and do those separately. Eventually, it will not be a hot commodity anymore. Like, especially IT positions are notorious for just the hot latest technology, and everyone's paying arm and a leg for it. And finally, it settles down because the new hot technology came in to take its place. So, very good question. I'm glad you asked that. So, if anyone has any questions during the presentation, don't hesitate to get on the chat box and ask us.
Cliff,
I like, huh?
we had a question come in.
Yeah.
Um, Someone says, even when a salary band is created, I think the placement protocol is ambiguous, so bias tends to play in where company constantly places someone new, for example, then, for example, lower than median. Is there any guide in knowing where to place someone?
No, there's there's no guide. It's basically what you're comfortable with and what your practice is and what supports the goals of your organization. Because I've seen usually you establish basically your midpoint, then you basically establish your min and your maxes. Your min basically says this is the least I'll pay for this job coming into the organization. Another thing I want to point out is your salary bands do not have to be symmetrical. For example, your tail could be a little bit, your max rather than 50% could be down a little bit higher, a little bit lower, so you don't risk overpaying new hires because that's what the market's bending is. It's just a wide band, but you just have to make a decision that if you remember, there's always going to be bias in comp plans. There's not a whole lot you can do about it, but you try to minimize that using these systems as best you can. So, you kind of look at things like, how much experience they got, how much education they got. And then in the end of the day, it's going to be a gut call. So, so good. Good. Thank you, Deborah. There was another one that popped up.
Yes, what factors should be considered in determining whether to use lead or match or lag structure?
it depends on your strategy and your philosophy. If you want to be the high pay leader, then you go get above the 50th percentile. For example, Google pays at the 90th percentile. Now, that with that kind of pay structure, they can afford to be picky. The employees know that if they leave Google, they're not going to get as high a pay as they are now, so they tend to make sure they do their job as as they should. So, but it's expensive to maintain. So you could take that strategy. A lot of people I talk to say they just want to be at the 50th percentile, and they'll deal with the wage inflation every year, every 2 years, and reestablish their salary plans. But the example I got, like paying under the midpoint, or just say I'm going to be maybe at the 35th percentile, the 40th percentile. Two things. You could be in an industry that's in decline and that's going out of business. So you don't want to pay anything above midpoint because you basically you're winding down business operations. That could be the reason you're doing it. But the example that I gave is that a lot of companies, when they do that, they'll go with a lower base pay, but they'll make it up in a bonus based on metrics, very strong metrics. And if the company meets all the metrics that it set out for itself, they'll get they'll get caught up. Actually get a bonus that pays over more than if they just got paid at the average, maybe plus some of their exceptional pay. So again, it depends on your organization, what you want to do, kind of how you want to treat employees and how much you can afford to pay. So that's always what it comes down to. Good questions. So now I gotta get back on what I was talking about. So anyway, the point about this is once you get to the 65,000, you also need to have a policy for when someone's at the max or over the max of the pay range. That could be an individual that's been with the company a long time. And I know you all have this out there. You have old Joe who's been with the company 40 years. He has 2 or 3 more years to retire. So they put him in this job, and of course his pay is over the max, and you come down to you and say, what do I pay this person? Well, um, if he's over the max, he's not by your policy that you established in your pay guidelines, he's not entitled to any increases or maybe a lump sum increase. But he's not going to quit or leave you because he can't make that money doing what he's doing anywhere else. So I get managers that want to push the envelope and go above the max. And I said, I always ask them at some point, I'm not gonna pay to do what you do. It gets to the point where you're paying so much for that job. They're like, well, the market reference on this is about 60 to 68,000. But so why do I have to pay them 75,000 if they're doing the same thing? Um, and that's where also you got to go back and say, is this the same job as they're doing? So if you have time questions, constructors wouldn't use broadbands or job grades. Broadbands. I was going to bring that up, but I'm glad you did. Now, the width of this band here is about let's say it's close to a 50% salary band. In other words, it's 50% from one end to the other. Very common structure. Sometimes 65% spreads are used like for executives because they tend to stay in those positions longer. Um, or you can have lower than like 40 to 45%. And usually those are hourly people who don't stay in those positions that long. But I've seen a lot of them, they just do 50% across the board. A broadband is a much broader band. It's just basically what it is. Those spreads are anywhere from 100 to 200%. So you don't have traditional positions. You can't sort of just have jobs that exist within that band, but they're so far below the maximum or above the entry, that it gives the manager a little bit more discretion in what they pay an individual, and that's either good or bad. Broadbands were popular when organizations like in the 90s were trying to flatten their structures a little bit. Broadband seemed to work in that case. I'm not a fan of broadbands. I'll use it when I'm trying to fix a problem with a client, but I don't see them much. I don't see them that much every day, and I don't recommend their use because they're hard to administer. They're hard to control costs. Plus, the big negative on a broadband is that if you're pulling market data and there's a bias in the market, let's say, females get paid lower or for some job somewhere, that bias is going to be reflected in your pay structure. So just something to be careful of when you do broadband, because you have many positions in agree 100% on your broadband comments. Well, thank you, James. Um, so that's my take on broadband. I'm not a big fan of them. I've used them when I'm trying to fix a problem. And welcome to a traditional salary band like this one. So yeah, this was my key slide, by the way. This is the one I wanted to do all the talking on. So um, another thing to keep in mind, when you're looking at salary data, you may notice that the median and the mean are two different numbers. You would think, and for those who got their ninth grade algebra, the median is the middle number in the data set. The mean is just an average, a simple average. So if the median does equal to the mean, if they're both equal numbers, then you have a symmetric bell curve. In other words, the left side is the same shape as the right side. Now, but usually what you see is the mean is usually higher than the median. Usually in most salary surveys, the data is going to be skewed. In other words, you're going to have a high bump in the beginning, then it's going to slowly taper down off the right side, or it's right. It's basically said it's skewed right. So a lot of people tend to use the median rather than the mean. Median is the middle point of the data set. You always hear, like, when they talk about housing prices, they always quote the median instead of the mean, because that throws out all those outliers and the tails and gives you a better sense of just what the market's paying is without the distortions that those high values can do to your analysis. So, all right, any more questions on this? Boy, I'm running out of time. All right, next slide, please. So, salary benchmark and market research where to get data is the title of this slide. Where do you get your data? Well, there's salary service surveys out there, and I label them the good, the bad, and the pretty darn ugly. Kind of know, what I like to say is know the pedigree of your salary data, where it's coming from. A good salary will give you a list of the participants. It'll give you an effective date. In other words, all this data is effective on March 1st, 2025. So you can help in aging it. It'll give you several cuts to the data and also follow Sherman antitrust guidelines for salary surveys. So the ugly one is actually the freebies like Robert Half. They give a lot of free quote surveys, but those you really got to be careful of, because some of those coming from their recruiters, and they tend to want to be in their best interest to quote hires, so they actually get paid more. So number 3, where go, where come. Oops, I didn't spell where right. Second one, sorry. Where go, where come. I tell managers, I say, if you really want to know what these jobs are paying, go talk to your recruiting department. and just say, they got applicants coming to in the door asking for certain wages and stuff, and that just sort of gives you a clue as to what that's a live market data right there. So, but where to go? Okay, they just left your organization to go get more pay someone else. Where are they, what are they getting paid? Is it how much more? I've seen employees leave an organization for less pay. And another thing to watch out for is when one of your employees leave and they say yes because of pay, usually that's an easy excuse. I mean, it's not against anybody. It's kind of a neutral excuse, but you need to do a good exit review to try to flesh out exactly why they are leaving. So, but then where come, where go, if you keep track of it, it gives you some real data. It gives you some market data in what I call real time of what's really happening out there in the field. So, okay, next slide, please. So, how can employee feedback be effectively gathered and utilized in compensation planning? So, gathering and utilizing employee feedback in planning involves a combination of systematic collection methods, transparent communication, and iterative integration of insights into decision making. So some of the effective methods to do this is regular and multiple feedback channels, anonymous feedback tools, manager involvement, frequent check-ins, and structured feedback design. Now, usually if I'm doing a sales comp project, one of the first things I do is actually do an employee survey of all the salespeople that are out there. And what I'm looking for is just how much time they do selling they do with non-sales activities. In other words, they're collecting bad invoices, or they're chasing down this or chasing down that. They should be out there selling. So I'll do a survey that's designed to tell me exactly how much time they're doing other things other than selling that I need to maybe break off and give to somebody else. So next slide, please. So utilizing employee feedback, transparency and communication clearly explain how compensation decisions are made and how employee feedback influences those decisions. This builds trust. It helps employees understand the rationale behind pay structures and changes, create feedback loops, establish iterative processes, excuse me, that where feedback is reviewed, discussed with your managers and HR, and incorporated into compensation adjustments, communicate back to employees what changes are made and based on their input to reinforce the value of their participation. Align compensation with employee needs and business goals. Use feedback to identify what employees value the most, whether salary, benefits, bonuses, work-life balance, and tailor their compensation packages accordingly. This alignment involves satisfaction, motivation, and retention. Data-driven adjustments. Analyze aggregated feedback data to protect patterns such as perceived pay inequities or dissatisfaction with specific benefits. Use these insights to refine salary bands, incentive plans, or effective offerings to better meet workforce expectations. Be sure to involve your stakeholders, collaborate with finance, leadership, and department heads to ensure informed compensation plans are financially sustainable and aligned with organizational strategy. Then you monitor and adapt, continuously monitor feedback post implementation to identify new concerns or areas for improvement. Be willing to adjust compensation plans and communicate updates properly to maintain engagement and fairness. And some of the benefits, so next slide, please. So benefits of integrating employee feedback enhances employee engagement and trust by making them feel heard and valued, leads to more equitable and competitive compensation structure, thereby reducing turnover and boosting productivity, and fosters a culture of transparency and inclusivity, strengthening the employee brand and talent acquisition. So next slide, please. So here are some of the benefits of using surveys for employee feedback. It's a cost-effective feedback collection. And also another thing I would do is be sure if you do it, if you can use a third party to collect the data and summarize it, you probably get better data because they're better off. Employees feel better if they're talking to a stranger rather than a company employee like management because they feel they won't they feel against retaliation or things like that. So try to get someone independent to do that. So anonymous and safe sharing, identify key changes over time, data-driven decision-making, drive cultural and organizational change, enhance retention and recruitment, and benchmark. And this has all helped to boost more employee satisfaction and productivity. So, and next slide, please. So, in summary, effective employee feedback gathering for compensation planning requires diverse, regular, and anonymous friendly methods combined with transparent communication and collaborative decision-making. Utilizing this feedback strategically enables organizations to create fair, motivating, and aligned compensation plans that drive engagement and business success. So, with that, I will yield. Kim?
Okay, do we have any questions that anyone would like to ask? All right, I'm not seeing anything coming in. Let me just
Thank you, Deborah.
reiterate that we will be sending a copy of this recording out as well as the slide deck by the end of day on Tuesday.
And my contact information is on there, correct, Kim?
Yes,
My
yes,
email
right
address?
here.
There
This
it is.
slide
Okay.
here.
Feel free to contact me directly. If you have a question, you can send me a message or call. Glad you could all make it, and good to hear from you. I'm glad you're active too. So okay, Kim.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.